So our next project is a monochromatic facial feature collage. And as you can see, it's a little bit abstract. In this project, we're going to focus on learning how to draw each of the major facial features realistically, but then combine them in an abstract and creative way to create the collages like you see here. Notice that they are monochromatic. Monochromatic simply means that it's one color and the tints and shades of that color. A shade is a color plus black, and a tint is a color plus white. Tones would be if you were mixing that color with gray. And you can see here in this chart how you can get a range of values, just like what we've talked about with pencil shading, about value being what works from light to dark. Now we're just beginning to add a color to that concept. So gather the materials you'll need. You'll need paper, the color that you're working with and neutral, black and white colored pencils, and then whatever color you've chosen to work with, different ranges of value for that. And then you're going to follow along with me as we work to create an eye. So this is how you draw an eye in monochromatic value.
Please hang up and try again.
Okay, so we're getting ready to do a monochromatic eye, and here was a quick example of one that I did just a moment ago, and I'm going to walk you through the process of creating an eye similar to this and what not to do. I want you to notice when you look at this that I used a range of blues here. My monochromatic color choice is blue, so I'm working on blue paper. I could work on a different color blue paper as long as it's blue. And I've got everything from a bright aquamarine blue to different kinds of light blues. I've got a really dark navy, or what they call indigo blue, and a super light blue, and white and black. All right, so to start this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to notice that there's like this white outline here. What we start with first is drawing the basic shape of the eye socket. So I'm going to scoot over here, and I'm going to draw this eye again. I start with thinking about the side of the nose. Let's scoot this up a little bit more. The arch of the eyebrow, the how that might arch, and I'm drawing like just the shape of an eye socket. Remember that they're not perfectly round or anything. It's, you know, a lot of people draw an eye socket and think it looks like this. Don't do that. Think about the side of the nose, how if you feel that brow bone, how it kind of has an arch to it, and then the bottom one is not quite as important for what we're doing. All right, then within this you want to draw a sphere that will represent the eyeball itself. Here's the thing, a lot of people draw this way too small. You want that, think about how that eyeball sits in the socket. So, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but there's an eyeball, okay? Using this as my guide, if you're following along, you've got the outside eye socket, you've got the eyeball lightly sketched in. Now we're going to think about the eyelid and how the eye opens. So over here, I'm going to, right beside the sphere, I'm just going to draw a little C shape, and that's going to represent my tear duct. So then I don't want to make this go all the way up because it would be like, it wouldn't work. So this is just the opening. So I'm going to go up. I'm going to get a little bit flat here and then kind of curve it around. And then for the bottom, I'm going to go kind of farther over and then back. So I've got a basic shape for my eyeball. You know, don't think about this shape. That is like a football or an almond shape, and you don't really want that shape for the eye. Depending on who you're drawing, you're going to be able to notice the actual shape of that person's eye opening. But in this case, as we're making this up, just noticing how it goes up, kind of gets flat and then curves around, and how the bottom one is comes to the center and then kind of curves up. Okay. The top part of the eyeball is going to help us have a guideline for the shape of our eyelid. Okay, where it kind of curves in. So I'm using that to kind of help me think about how that would look. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. A lot of people don't like to draw bottom lids, but the truth is you do have a bottom lid. And so just kind of implying that there's a fold here that lets the eye close. Without a bottom lid, you can't close your eyes. It's not just that you have bags under your eyes or you look tired, it's that you actually need that to function. All right, so I'm going to also go ahead in here and kind of mark where the thickness of the skin here in the eye opening and how that would kind of come through. I might see just a little bit of it in places, and I can come back and define that more in a bit. I'm going to sketch in the shape of the iris. Notice too, I didn't make this tiny. It's going to be fairly large. And then I'm going to make the shape of the pupil, okay? Now I've got the basic structure here. Notice I didn't draw in eyelashes, and I have not drawn in an eyebrow. I saved those little detail things for the end. So now that I've got this sketched in with the white, and the reason I chose white there was because it could easily get colored or shaded over if I make any mistakes. Notice I didn't erase anything, even though there are kind of lines under this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a blue. I'm choosing a mid-tone blue first, and I'm going to think about shadow for a second. And I'm just going to think, okay, well, when my eyelid is kind of tucked like that, there's a shadow in there. So I'm going to put a shadow there. Also, I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow over here. I'm thinking about going with the contour or the curve of the form. And I'm just kind of roughing it in. There would be a shadow kind of under the eye. Like this. It is this part of adding the shading and really being able to think about where the shadows would form. You are drawing light. We've talked about this with shading before. Thinking about where the shadow is the thing that is actually going to make this look more real. And notice that I'm putting a little shadow here. The eyelid itself would cast a shadow, and I'm thinking about the fact that that is a sphere in there. I'm going to kind of darken up where the edge of this would be, and where the edge of this would be, and where the edge of this would be. And now I'm going to get my darker blue. And, whatever the darker version of your chosen color is, and I'm going to go ahead and darken into that crease some more. And, a lot of this is about pencil pressure. I don't have to push super hard yet. If I want to get it really dark, I can push harder. And if I want it to be a little lighter, I can push a little lighter. Colored pencil lets you do a lot of layering, and that's a great way to kind of go slowly and build the shading. You don't have to worry about making it perfect on the first pass. A lot of people with drawing, they think they can just do it really quick and then it's going to look great. But the truth is, good work takes time. So I'm going to get over here into this corner. I'm going to define that thickness of the eye a little bit in there and kind of how it comes around here. And same thing on this side. Defining a little bit of that thickness of the lid here and how it kind of comes around. Still not drawing in eyelashes. Not time for that yet. Okay. Now I've got that I can kind of imagine this shadow, and I would honestly take more time to learn this and work with this. Everybody wants to jump into the detail of the eyeball itself, and that's fine. We're going to build that part too. So I'm going to go ahead right here, and I'm going to start to kind of, using my darkest blue, I'm going to start to shade in the pupil, and I am going to think about where I want the highlight in the pupil to be and kind of leave that. I'm going to go around and darken up the edge here a bit. Now everybody's iris has different patterns in it. They do tend to have a kind of spokes that point in towards the pupil, and they're different in everybody. I just kind of start to make shapes like this. They don't have to be exactly like what you see in your own eye when you're drawing your eye or anybody else's. It's the idea of getting kind of just that pattern of shape in there. I'm going to darken up that a little bit more. Now I am going to go ahead and get my white back, and here I'm going to think about the white of the eye. A lot of times people want this part to be like super bright white, but that flattens the eye. Letting it be a little gray and thinking about how that top lid casts a shadow is important, but also thinking about the highlight that the eye would get, and maybe that there is a highlight on the white of the eye as well. I'm going to use a different blue here to kind of add some more tone into the eye itself. I could use my lightest blue to kind of go in and put a little bit more depth and detail in there. I can use that light blue too, kind of near the top of the eye, to think about where the light might be hitting it. Light might be kind of getting down here on that cheekbone that's around the eye a little. Maybe on the outside edge over here a little bit. Kind of making this part up, but if you're really looking at an eye, the best thing to do when you're learning is really look at one and kind of see, and then when you're using your imagination, you can remember what you learned looking at an eye. Now, a lot of this next part is the refining and kind of noticing where you need to refine more, what part needs more detail. I'm going to use that dark blue to kind of not be afraid now to add in the darker shadowy parts to give it more depth. A lot of times people like to leave this part out because they're afraid they'll mess it up. Don't worry about that. If you don't add the depth, that's what messes it up. Do not be afraid of the dark, for it gives form to what we see in the light. Okay. All right, and so I noticed this part would look better a little bit darker. And so I'm not afraid to push hard here now to give it a little bit more depth. And I think kind of under this part right here, a little bit more depth, maybe even a little bit like over here. And, you know, this part can take time to refine. And I honestly would spend a lot more time than I'm going to spend in this tutorial or this process to really kind of work on adding detail. But okay, now I'm going to get my black because I'm going to get even darker now. The pupil tends to be really black, and so going ahead over that blue now and putting in the black will give it more depth. Can even use that around the outside edge here, and particularly to define where the eyelid forms here. Still leaving that thickness in. Thinking about how it would kind of wrap around. See how I'm like giving it that little corner right there? All right, so I've got a basic eye here. Now, obviously I'd spend more time, you know, adding some depth here and there, but I want to move on and just show you guys some quick things to also add about your eyelashes. Please don't do this. Please do not. It looks like pins are going into the eye. It would hurt. And the eyebrow, please don't do this. Your eyebrows do not look like that. Okay, so when we're making the lashes, something to remember is that when they're on this side of the eye, they tend to be shorter and curve this way. They start to go to the middle and get longer, and then they're longest over here, and they curve towards the outer edge. Notice how as I'm doing this, I'm keeping them kind of clumped together. Some are short and some are long. They're not all the same length. And they start to curve. And some are thick and some are thin. And outside edge. All right, there's some lashes. Okay. I can kind of go back in and thicken some up if I need to. Then also on the bottom lashes, it's the same thing. And you all have bottom lashes. Okay. And you don't have to make them as long or as detailed, but you do need to put them in. And they do also tend to get a little longer on that side. If I wanted to define this a little bit more, I might either use white or this. I'm using the really light blue to think about like being able to make them seen in the dark part. Might even put some over there, over here too. All right, so I've got some lashes now. That was my finishing touch. I don't do that right away. I want to make sure this is well shaded before I do the lashes. On the eyebrow, using this as the guideline, if I come up from the edge of my the tear duct and I go up, then these tend to curve this way, tends to be thicker over here, curve, 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 and thin out as you get to the edge of the eye. You know, some people will have a flatter eyebrow, some people will have a really defined eyebrow, some people have kind of thick ones, some people have kind of stray ones in there. And I'm using black, but I would also go in here with my blue, maybe, and maybe even my white, because I am thinking in monochromatic value, and I'm going to also really make sure I use my darkest blue in there. All right, so hopefully you were able to follow along and at least have the basics, and I want you to practice doing one on your phone now.
You're actually going to need two eyes, a left and a right, so the tear duct will be on one side close to the nose and then the other. Good luck. I can't wait to see how these turn out, and in the next video, I'll show you how to do a nose.